They came out on a tabulator, and then all these groups, then the geniuses were the ones that could break it, and if they would see a certain group of 5 a lot, then they would know that that was something important, then they could break that. And then it was just, when my husband was in Hawaii, they were breaking the Japanese code, and they did. They worked sometimes around the clock doing that. But it's a lot more hard to do than I was doing. Yeah.
What was it like to be a woman in the forces?
Well, I thought it was fine. I didn't notice anything different. Nobody got mad at me or anything else. I mean, I didn't have any problems at all. And the fellows were nice. Those were the days when they didn't use bad language around women. So I thought that was pretty nice. Now, and they used to apologize if they did, but now no one apologizes for filthy language, so the world has changed a lot.
Did you admire the people that you served with?
Yes, I did.
Could you describe some of them to me?
Well, they were all nice people. They were all well-bred. You know, I didn't have any trouble with them. Didn't have any trouble with bad language, which I still despise to even now. But I just think people were a lot nicer then.
Did you admire your commanding officer?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Could you describe your commanding officer for me?
Well, he was Lieutenant Commander Cameron. Is that okay to say the name? But I just knew him while I was in the Navy, and everybody admired him. I mean, he did his job well. And then the fellow that was just above him became an admiral, and he was a really nice person too. Everybody just seemed to be really nice. I know that's not very exciting, but
I'm going to take a quick break right here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so what were you doing every day? What were you looking for when you were breaking codes?
Well, we had to sort them out. First we key punched, but then we got over that, and then we went in the other room where they had the machines, and we would put them through another machine, and that would sort them out, you know, by number. And then we had a multiplier too, and I'm trying to think what the multiplier was. I can't remember what that was. But then they went into the tabulators, and we just had the one fella in another room that would put this whole section of cards in the tabulator, and that would all print out what we had punched in. That would print out in this long sheet of paper. And then I guess that would go to the people that were actually doing the codes, trying to get the certain groups, whatever they were sent. Let's see, we had the the Americans, the English, the Germans. So anyhow, I think you can erase that.
What was your most challenging experience while you were in the Navy?
Oh gosh. I can't think of what was challenging. I suppose everything was challenging because I had never done anything like this before. But it was exciting, you know. I never thought that things were too hard because it was challenging, everything I did, and I was really proud to be in the Navy. But of course, during World War II, everybody did something. If they didn't join the services, they worked in the shipyards and they worked in the airplane areas, and it was just a whole 100% effort for everyone. Not like some of these other wars, you know, but because everybody wanted to get over them. And of course, at the time, they made the Japanese look like horrible people. They put them with buck teeth, and they made them look so bad. And also, you know, when they dropped the bomb in Japan, well, a lot of people thought that was a terrible thing to do. I mean, now they do. But at that time, that saved hundreds, thousands of people, although a lot of people were killed in Japan, but it saved a lot of people from dying because the Japanese were doing pretty good. They had conquered a lot of islands, and they were on their way to conquer Hawaii again. So I felt it was necessary. At least that's what the propaganda was at the time, that it was necessary to do this. So.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
Oh dear. Well, I recall one time when everybody was at the mess hall and they thought the coffee was so good that day, even better than before. And when they cleaned it out, there was this huge rag that had fallen in, which was hilarious to think that the rag made it taste so much better. So that's about the only thing I can think of right now. That was, you know, that was a long time ago. That was 70 years ago. So, and my memory's not that good.
How did you stay in touch with your family while you were across the country from them?
Well, I had to write letters. Telephones were expensive, and I think we didn't use them unless somebody died or something like that. But I wrote my mother. That was another thing they said, oh, these girls that are in there, you know, they go out and they drink and all that stuff. Well, on the 3rd floor, we had all these girls that would stay there in the evenings, and we would socialize, and you know, we had a really good time, and we weren't of the party that went out drinking or carrying on. There were so many girls that for the first time in their lives they got away from home and they just went wild, but most of us did not. Most of us. So we would go up there and we would write letters and do all kinds of things like that. So.
How often did you hear from your family?
Oh, quite often. At least once a week. My mother was so worried about me being that far away from home.
What was your hardest adjustment to being so far away?
I didn't think it was that hard. I guess maybe because there were so many of us, and I just had one sister, and so being with so many people, I guess that was kind of hard at first.
What did you do while on leave?
Oh, well, we went up to New York. My roommate had a sister that lived in New Jersey, and so sometimes we would stay with her, and then other times we'd stay in New York City. And they gave us, they gave us this nice building that used to be a mansion, and they would charge 50 cents for a night. And the New York City people were wonderful to us. They gave us free dinners and free. I saw my first stage show that was, oh my gosh, now I can't think of it. It was what was it? I just saw it again not too long ago. It's the name of a state. Oklahoma, yes, Oklahoma. Yeah, so we saw a lot of free stage shows, and that was wonderful. And we went to dinners. They gave us dinners. They gave us all kinds of things. So I fell in love with the New York people because so.
How often were you able to go up to New York?
Well, we went not every weekend because we couldn't afford it, but it just cost $10 to ride the train up to New York City. Can you believe that? And so we would go about twice a month, and that was a lot of fun. But then we also stayed at home. We stayed in D.C. a lot too, and we went and visited all the different buildings in New York, in D.C. And I learned to love D.C., and it's still my favorite city. And we've lived around here in the D.C. area ever since we were in the Navy. My husband was in the Navy. He was from Texas.
How did you meet him?
Well, he and a group of fellows were stationed in Hawaii. He doesn't like people to think that he was over there swimming and having a gay old time, because he wasn't. He was working hard, and they would work around the clock sometimes, you know. But they came back in January of '45, and they were wild. They hadn't been around women for a long time, so I wouldn't date any of them, even though they had asked me, and I wouldn't date them. I thought they were too wild. But then I did, and then I found out they weren't wild at all. They were really nice kids, and they never used bad language around the women. They would just apologize if they accidentally did it. Or they would go in the other room and shoot dice, and maybe they hollered over there, I don't know. But then we met, his best friend was married, and so we became really good friends with them, and we did a lot of things with them. So we had a good social life too.
Earlier you mentioned the ham sandwiches and the coffee, but what was the food like?
The food was okay. It was just that it was 5 o'clock in the morning when they gave us ham sandwiches, and somehow that didn't set well when you were tired. I mean, you were so tired about 5 o'clock in the morning, and then they'd give you these sandwiches, which we were hungry, but there was nothing wrong with the sandwiches. It was just the way I felt about them.
Did you get enough sleep after the
I did.
night shift?
Well, it was hard to sleep in the daytime, yeah. If you didn't go to bed right away, then you just didn't go to bed at all, because you would get your second wind, you know, being used to being up in the daytime. But if you went to sleep right away, then you could get maybe 4 or 5 hours in. So it was hard to adjust to different shifts, because as I said, we changed every week, so that was hard.
What did you do in the days and the weeks after the war ended?
Well, I did the same thing I was doing all along. I did the same kind of work and all, and that was for another year. So we didn't do anything different.
Do you remember having any parties after the war ended?
Well, yeah, we all got pretty excited about, and we celebrated. But that time I wasn't really drinking, you know. Not that I'm drinking now, but I didn't consider that I had to drink a whole lot of liquor to have a good time. So, But we had friends in the Navy, and we played different card games, and that's about all we did, just play cards. And we went to dances. We went to a lot of dances. So.
How long did you stay in the Navy after the war ended?
Exactly a year. Yeah, because in August is when the war ended in Japan, I guess. And so I stayed in. I went in the Navy in August 15th, 1994, and I got out of the Navy in August of 1946.
How did your job change after the war ended?
It didn't really change. It was the same thing.
Why did you do the same thing after the war?
Well, because all those, I mean, not everything was uncovered. You know, they had to keep working at it. They worked at it for several years after the war. Mm-hmm. So it was the same, exactly the same.
Did you ever get tired of the work?
Well, it wasn't exciting work, but you know, you did it because you had to. So.
What did you do after the war?
You mean while I was still in the Navy? No.
After you left the
Well,
service?
I met my husband while I was there. He was one of the fellows that came back from Hawaii, and so we got married. I got out of the Navy in August, and we got married in October. And